This is video number 5 of the life story of Theodore Klein. You mentioned that you wanted to talk a little bit more about religion.
Well, yes, in the sense that my background, because all my children and my grandchildren have only known of that they grew up in an Ashkenazi household, Nusach Ashkenaz. But basically, I started as a youngster in Europe, and we davened all my house, my parents' household we used to daven Nusach Sfard. And my brother was bar mitzvahed in 1938. By the way, we had an apartment near the house that my dad started a shul in, so we had a shul right on our premises. In 1938, my brother was bar mitzvahed in that shul. In 1938, he was 13, I was 8 years old, and and I remember my grandparents there. My grandparents and my grandfather on my father's side gave him a chumash. He wrote in there to his grandson, Alexander Ben Yehuda Aryeh, and I don't know what else he wrote in there.
Does he still have that chumash, or did he?
I don't know if he still has the chumash. He passed away last July. He was 2 weeks short of 87 years old. I'm going to ask his wife whether she still has that chumash. I haven't seen it in many years. I'm sure he had it with him in his marriage, but I don't know what happened to it. Now so when we came to this country, we started to daven Nusach Sfard. There were a few shuls in the neighborhood that davened that way, but then one closed, and then another, and then the closest one to us was like a half a block away from us. We started to go there. And in 1943, that's where I got bar mitzvahed in Nusach Shul, where they daven Nusach Sfard. By the way, my brother's bar mitzvah seder was Matas Maseh, the last two seders in Bamidbar. I was bar mitzvahed in 1943. It was a winter time, and it was in the book of Shemos. My bar mitzvah seder is the second seder in book of Shemos, which is Va'eru.
You sure you weren't bar mitzvah in 1944?
No, 1943.
So you were born in 31?
30.
Oh, you were born in 30. Mommy was born in 29, right? That's right.
I was born in 1930, and it was strange because I was born on the second day of the month of Shvat, which is very early for Shemos, for my Seder. I was born in English on January 31st. And yet my Hebrew birthday was the second day of Shvat, which is most of the times it comes out earlier in January. It had to be a leap year. I also, so I grew up that way, and then what happened was that shul closed down.
So what shul was it that you were bar mitzvahed in?
In the Nusach Sfard shul.
What was the name of it?
I don't know the name of it. It was a little shtibel. A rabbi, his name was Rabbi Shapiro. He was the rabbi in it. It was just somebody had made a shul in a little building. It was really somebody, the rabbi lived upstairs and the shul was downstairs.
Do you remember much about your bar mitzvah? Was there a party of any sort?
No, there was no party. We we were very poor at that point. And all I did was I did my bar mitzvah. I got up, I made like a 2-3 minute speech, and I just ran out. I ran downstairs. I had finished, you know. What I remember, it started with my Tyra Vater and Mutter, my dear father and mother. Heute bin ich, today I'm a Jew, which means that I'm of age not to be counted in.
So you did the speech in Yiddish?
Yiddish. I was speaking Yiddish. So I spoke about 10 minutes in Yiddish. And then...
Are you fluent in Yiddish?
No, I didn't know any Yiddish at all. The man wrote it out, my teacher. Mr. Legman was his name. He was a shtikler chazan. He was like a little cantor in the shul. He wrote it out. He taught me the bar mitzvah. And so I did that. And then right after we finished, we all went upstairs and had lunch. I don't even remember getting a pen for my bar mitzvah. Maybe I got a new shirt. And that was it. I remember my father take me down to the Lower East Side to get me my first suit.
How old for your bar mitzvah?
For my bar mitzvah. The suit was like if I remember correctly, it was like a brown colored suit. That was my first suit. Till then, I only wore knickers and short pants. And in winter, you wear knickers mostly. Then
did you lay in the Torah, or you just
no,
had the Haftorah?
The kids as a rule didn't lane. Only a few, I guess, who went to yeshivas. But most of the kids only did they did the bracha on the Torah. Maybe some who knew can read the Haftorah, and that was it.
So you didn't even do the Haftorah. You just got.
I did the Haftorah.
You did.
Oh yeah, I read the Haftorah.
But you didn't lay in the Torah. Did you lay in Maftir?
No, I wasn't learning to
so
do
you
that.
just called up for an aliyah, and then you did the Haftorah, and that was it.
Right, yeah. He called me up in a nice voice, and I came up, and I did that.
Things are a little different today.
Yeah, much different. And what's interesting also was that this is always a memory with me. I met the oldest man that I ever knew at that point in my life. In our little shul, a little shtibel, it was 1941 or 42. A little elderly man used to come in, and he was holding on to a man, his arm, and he used to come in to daven Saturday mornings. And I was told that the man was 103 years old.
Wow.
So that means that this man was born like 1840, something. Wow. I couldn't believe that. That was, that's quite startling, because I always played the mind game of if this man was born there, that means that somebody was probably playing with him, said nice things about him as a baby, and that person was probably born in 17-something.
Right.
So I knew somebody who knew somebody from 1700s.
Wow.
Which is really spans a couple of 100 years in age.
It's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
So it seems like far-fetched, we think about, but he probably lived at the time of George Washington, that fellow, or that woman. So it was interesting.
Yeah. Back to this shul in Europe. So you never mentioned that. So your father decided to build a shul?
Yes. My father we had our own shul on the premises. We had a very nice house. Wasn't, you're thinking of, wasn't a house with the stove and everything, but this was like a U-shape. If you can picture a U-shape development, a property, U-shaped property, and the houses went all around, both sides. So we had apartments all the way, all around. We had tenants.
Where did he get the Torah from?
I don't know that. I didn't know that. Maybe Bob or the Torah.
Was the shul there your whole life, or?
No. He built it somewhere in the 30s. let him use the apartment for a Torah, for a shul. As a matter of fact, I think that's where he met this man who came from America and told my dad about the bonus. So it was very possible that that's where they met. On our holidays, we went to very nice, they had beautiful synagogues in the town. And we davened in one of those nice synagogues, which was much further up from us, walking distance.
So your father built a little shtibel for the local people?
Right, yes. So we used to have a minyan on Shabbat and maybe during the week. I was too young, I didn't really went to school, I didn't know what was going on. So I just wanted to let everyone know that I started out as New Six Fard, and then what happened was the shul I got bar mitzvah in went under. There was a little, and the man sold the property, and we had no place to turn to at that point. We didn't know what shul to go to. And right around the corner from us was Interrail Avenue, and there had a very nice little synagogue there. It was called the Interrail, the Minsker Congregation. Now, the Minsker Congregation was in the 1920s. This couple, their name was W-O-U-K, Wook, the Wook family. The Wook family, Mrs. Wook had a father, Rabbi Levine, very elderly gentleman, very knowledgeable, with a big white beard hanging out, and she made a shul for him. So he was the spiritual leader of the Minsker congregation. These people were from Minsk. Minsk is a town in the Ukraine, Russia. So most of the congregants were of, I guess, Russian descent, and anyhow, that was the shul. And eventually, the shul turned to more Americanized, and there was some influence. So they changed it to the Intervale Avenue Jewish Center. Now, what's interesting about this was that we davened there a few years, and my dad passed away in 1946, March 1946. And I was going there, and I was saying Kaddish for my dad, my brother, and I. When my dad passed away, my brother was still in the service. It was 1946. The war ended like about a month or so later. My brother was stationed in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It was right outside of New Orleans. He was stationed at. And he came, he got a pass and he came home, and he never had to go back. If he did, it was just for a short time because they were discharging all the servicemen. They didn't need them anymore. The war ended. So he was discharged. So my brother and I were going to the shul every day, morning and evening, to say Kaddish for my dad. What was interesting is that it came to the time of the month of Elul, and the congregation was having a little problem. They didn't have anybody to blow shofar. So I went every morning. I was going every morning. My brother was probably working, so he couldn't come every morning. So, but before school, I went there, and then from there I ran to school. So Rabbi Levine always pushed my brother and I up to daven by the Omed. Always got us pushed us up. So he decided that he wanted the shofar blown. He was a man in his 80s already by So he wanted somebody to work. So he got me, and he taught me how to blow the shofar. So he worked with me a little bit, and I learned how to blow the shofar. So every morning I would blow the shofar for the congregation right after davening. So then I was concerned because I was worried that they're going to ask me to do the shofar blowing for the Yom Tovim. And usually they don't ask single people, especially a young kid. They like the married man as a rule to do this, more responsible person. Anyhow, I was so relieved when I found out they got somebody for the holidays. But what's interesting about the story is that in the 40s, early 40s, he had a son, his grandson, Mrs. Wook's son. The Wook's family made money. They had a big laundry, huge laundry in the Bronx, and that was their parnosa. They made a lot of money in that laundry. Anyhow, their son's name was Herman Wook. It might ring a bell with some people. Herman Wook is a writer. Herman Wook wrote the Caine Mutiny. Herman Wook wrote Marjorie Morningstar. Herman Wook wrote This Is My God. He wrote all kinds of books. Very renowned writer in the 40s and the 50s, 60s. And he used to come in, when I was a kid, I used to go to shul. He used to come in, he used to get a leave from the service. He was in the Navy. He used to come in with his Navy uniform like 1942. He used to come in, he was an officer in the Navy. He used to come walking into shul, and on Rosh Hashanah, the first day of Rosh Hashanah, he always got mafter for the first day of Rosh Hashanah. They gave him mafter. So, that was my I thought it was very interesting that I knew this man. He was a writer. I knew him as a kid. Of course, he didn't pay attention to me.
Right.
But he was in the shul with me and all that. Now, what happened was I was a member of that shul for many years. But maybe I became member maybe about the 1958 when I left. Towards the end, I was in charge of the bookkeeping in the shul, and then we changed rabbis. Rabbi Levine was an old man, and he decided to move to Israel. And they paid for him, and they went to Israel. He died there eventually in Israel. He was buried there. It was a Rabbi Dreisinger took over the shul. Very nice voice, Rabbi Dreisinger. And he became a member of the shul. He was the rabbi of the shul for many years. And in 1958, we moved out because the neighborhood just changed drastically. It became primarily Puerto Rican, not black. There weren't many blacks in that area, but the Jews were moving out, and it was bad already. Our whole building was all Puerto Rican, and they were destroying the buildings, the apartments. They did such terrible things in the apartment, in the hallways and everything. So we finally moved out. We moved further east.
Was this city housing you were in?
No, this was a private.
Just a private apartment.
It was a 6-story building.
What floor were you on?
We were on the 3rd.
Did it have an elevator?
No, it was a 5-story walk-up. That's what it was. No elevator, and no air conditioning. And what's interesting is that in the summertime, people used to sit out on a fire escape to get some air. It was so hot. In the winter, when there wasn't enough heat, people used to bang on the pipes for the super to send heat up. We used to have a dumb waiter. It's called a dumb waiter. In the hallway was the bell would ring for each floor, and he would pull up this little elevator. He would pull it up from downstairs, People would come out and they put the garbage pails in the dumbwaiter, and then he let it down, empty it, and pull it back up. Then they went down to the next floor. And that's how. Excuse me. Excuse me. That's how I used to empty the garbage. That's how the garbage was taken care of. But we couldn't live there anymore. After a while, it just was one time was all Jews in the building.
What street was that?
This was on the corner of 165th Street and Kelly Street.
That in the South Bronx?
South Bronx.
So where did
As a
you
matter of fact, if you saw that movie, the Fort Apache, it's called, that was my Simpson Street station, police station. That was precinct 41. That's where we lived. The whole area was a big dope center of the Bronx. The whole area was dope, prostitution, all kinds of stuff was going on there. As a matter of fact, some of you might heard of, was General Powell.
Colin Powell.
Colin Powell. Colin Powell wrote in his biography that he used to work for and I used to know that, I knew this story, for a Sixer, S-I-C-K-S-E-R, Sixer Brothers. They had a baby store. In other words, baby carriages and furniture, baby furniture. He used to work for them. After school, he used to work for that company. So this was primarily, my.
Where did you move to next?
Well, we moved east to Herod. It's called Herod Avenue, H-A-R-R-O-D, Herod Avenue. It's right off the Bronx River Parkway, and off Westchester Avenue. Westchester Avenue was a key street in the Bronx.
So right at the very end of the Bronx River Parkway.
The what?
The Bronx River Parkway ends at Westchester Avenue.
Oh no. The Bronx River Parkway goes all the way down to Bruckner Boulevard.
Right.
Which isn't far further than Westchester Avenue. Just a little bit further down.
Yeah. So you moved over to Herod Avenue. What was the address? Do you remember?
I don't remember the address, but it was a private house, and we moved in there.
You rented it? You were renting a private house?
We were renting. Not the house, we were in an apartment upstairs. Okay, the owners lived downstairs. So we stayed there a few years. That's where I met my wife when I was living there. Those are the guys I used to hang around with from that area. We went to Taft High School. They went to do modern dancing, and I went to learn Ivrit, Hebrew.
Okay, so let's tell that story. Well, the Herod Avenue neighborhood was much better than the...
Oh yes, it was a Jewish neighborhood. Eventually that also neighborhood turned. Because what happened was, right a little few blocks up from there, they built a project. And these housing projects, they brought in mostly a lot of welfares and things started to go best. People had nice homes, their own houses, and they started to sell them, get rid of them. They wanted to get out. So the whole neighborhood eventually just went.
Do you remember, I don't know what year it took place in, but do you remember when Robert Moses built the Cross Bronx Expressway?
Yes, I remember that. I wasn't aware about Robert Moses per se doing it, but I remember very well when they built the Cross Bronx Expressway. When it was finished, it was great, because I held on wheels for people who they tore down all these houses and they built the structures right over them, so people got displaced. But it was very good when it was finished. You know, it went from one end of the Bronx to the other end of the Bronx. to Washington Heights in no time.
They say it destroyed neighborhoods, though,
Yes.
because
It did. And eventually, and what happened was in the 50s, a big tragedy occurred in the Bronx. And eventually it hit, I think, Brooklyn also. The element got so bad, they were burning down houses. People were leaving big, beautiful structure houses. They were just running away because the crime was unbearable. And all these homes, they boarded them up. If you would have thought that it was Europe in the Second World War, with all the bombings, everything was boarded up. Big buildings, beautiful buildings, boarded up. Nobody lived there. Nobody lived there. I worked for the housing authority at that one point, and I remember in my neighborhood was Fox Street, and I was doing a site audit again. They bought the properties and they were going to build this a project there, and I had to go check in apartments. I got a maintenance man. I says, let's go into this tall building. Let's go see what's. The whole building was empty. It was all boarded up. So he said, okay. We went into the building and he took a crowbar, and he took off. He opened the door. He got the door open, and we went inside one of the apartments. Not that were people, and when we walked in, we saw guys sitting there. We saw guys sitting there on the stoop, all doped up, just sitting there lethargic. They probably gave themselves needles at that point. So we went in, and we went in, and there was a little table there, and on the table was syringes. A little thing with a light to heat up the dope, whatever it is, and what the paraphernalia that they were using. So the reason we went into that apartment, we went in and went like this, and the door opened. So they were using that particular room for this. They knew already. So I said, come on, let's get out of here. This is
it's dangerous.
it was dangerous. You don't know what the hell's going on with these nuts. So we got out, we just walked out, went past these guys sitting there, all doped up. I saw this doped up in Harlem also. When I was doing an order on 35th Street, and in the morning I was going into work, and there's the, what do you call it, the maintenance man, and he is spraying all the benches outside. Because they laid on the benches all night, they were there, and I passed one guy, and he's leaning on a car, and his head is nodding down. He's getting up, he's nodding down. He was all doped up. So we ran into this all the time. You know, when I worked, I only worked the slums. I didn't go into, every project was in a slum. It wasn't nice places.
I remember you telling me a story years ago about the glass bill at one project to replace the glass.
Oh yeah, this was Vladeck houses. I never forgot that. Excuse me. This was on the Lower East Side, one of the oldest projects. Were built in the very early 40s, maybe even earlier. And Vladeck houses was very nicely made. It was, you walked into the courtyard, and off the courtyard were buildings surrounding so you could go into one building after the other all around. So one day I was walking, I went in, and I was checking, as I always do because I was doing an audit, and it struck me. I looked up, and I never saw so much apartments, and like on a second floor, apartments, all broken glasses, all over the place, broken glasses. So I said to somebody, what's going on here? What the hell is all this broken glass? I mean, I lived in an apartment for 30 years, nobody ever had a broken glass in a building. And all these buildings were broken glass. So I said to the man, So he says, they stand in the middle of the yard, they throw things, they break windows. So I look at the budget and I say, and they had a $10,000 budget for in the this is 1950, 60, 61, $10,000 budget for broken glass, to repair broken glass. That's, people were making nothing those days. And they had to spend $10,000 to repair glass. These people didn't care. They were welfare, whatever they were. They just no respect for anything. So that was one experience. And one other project. This was in St. Nicholas House in Harlem. I went in walking through the hallway, and I see they had nice they had hoses for fire, and they were all cut. The hoses were all cut. It boggled the mind. Why would they want to? They needed a hose to put out something, just jeopardize themselves. But no one cared. They didn't think of anything about anybody else. Well, they just didn't care. They were raised like that. A lot of crime, a lot of all over the city. I remember in 1940, when I was early, excuse me, boy, can't cough that up. 1941, first times I remember were the race riots. There were race riots in Detroit. Big race riots, and finally it was all over the country, hit New York City. So I was going to junior high school in a pretty 50% almost neighborhood, blacks and whites, and all of a sudden we used to get out of school at 3 o'clock. At 15 minutes to 3. I was in the rapid class, which was primarily white kids in the class, mostly Jewish. And the teacher got us. He says, "Okay, we're leaving school." It was 2:45, and he walked us down to the corner. And then we were told to get home as quick as possible. So we ran like hell down the block. And once we hit Intervale Avenue, we knew we were safe, because that was like a cutoff point.
So, and there was a riot then?
Yeah, there were riots all over. They were like, what were they? I didn't see the riots because we didn't live there, but it wasn't fun. I remember while I was there, it was during the war. This is the middle of the war. And I remember we had air raid one time. And one of my Jewish boys in our class, he lived in Boston Road, and Boston Road was already a changing area. And what happened was that there was a blackout, and he went into his building to go upstairs, and they knifed him. He was 12 years old.
Did he die?
No, he didn't die, but he was knifed. So, that was the way it was. One time we were attacked. I was about 18, and it was about 5 or 6 of us, and we went to the movies, and the movie was already on Prospect Avenue, which was a black area, primarily at that point. So we went to the movie, and we were walking home, and we reached our street, 165th Street, and we had to go down. Once we got down to the park, go downstairs, we were in our neighborhood. But as soon as we got that corner, unbeknownst to us, we were followed by all these black kids. There was about 15 of them at least. As soon as we got to the corner, boom, they surrounded us. What happened is that we had one Jewish boy, a Sephardic boy, and so this black kid puts his hand in here, he's going to pull out a knife, whatever he's threatening, threatening, and he gets close to this guy, and the Jewish boy hits him in the mouth, and he went flying back. Whoa, wow, now, one idiot, I know, I say, he hollers out, this one Jewish kid, he hollers out, run for it. What the hell are you doing running for it? These kids were about 15 years old or so. We're going to run. So, not to say, who the hell do you have there? One boy was a problem, George. He just died, my friend George. George had a lot of problems. He was a schizophrenic. And what happened with George is that he couldn't run. He had trouble running. He was very slow. So George was left and I was left there. And they all were running. Everybody ran away. There was just the two of us. So George and I started to say, George, come on, let's go. Go ahead first. And I was just, because I was very fast. And I was just, what do you call it? How would you say? Keeping pace with him slowly, let him get ahead, trying to protect him as much as I could. And every time they got near, I just stopped and I went running to them. And they all ran back. And I worked this thing down for 2 blocks. My problem was George couldn't run anymore. He ran out of steam. And he started to take his coat off because he couldn't breathe. So that's what they had to do. At that point, when he stuck it so now, he really slowed down. And the guy came from the other side and he smashed him over the head with a broomstick. So I cut his head open, and George fell down, and I kept hollering, I was screaming, at them. And finally, people started to open the windows, and they all started hollering out from up there. So these kids ran the hell away. So I picked up George, and somebody was kind enough, they called an ambulance, and I picked up George, and I took him to the park bench, and I laid him down on the bench, and I put my jacket under him. So I ended up taking him into the Lincoln Hospital. These guys they told me that we ran for help. Then you're gonna run for help. Midnight, you're gonna run for help from who? That's I never trusted Jewish kids to help you.
No.
Because they're the first ones to run. Man, did they run like hell. You never saw them run so fast in your life. And so I saved his life primarily. Because who knows what they would have done to me if I didn't work him down that far. But I couldn't, once he was hit on the head, I couldn't protect him anymore.
Right.
Because, I was all alone myself.
You want a drink?
Thanks. So I'm not a hero, but I was gutsy enough not to leave him alone. I stood with him, and I was taking my own chances, but I did that. So he never forgot that. So then so I took him to the Lincoln Hospital, and I spent the whole night with him in the hospital. I think they kept him overnight because maybe he had what do you call that?
Concussion.
Concussion. All right, then finally, eventually came back home. So that wasn't a good experience, but that's what it was. But there was another one of these crazy stories. But this was my youth, I guess.
What's the
incidents?
What's the other story?
Which one?
You said there was another crazy story.
No, there was. Things were always happening. We did. I don't know what. This was a dangerous situation. And. But I never, what do you call it? I never, it's not in my nature to pull out of a confrontation. If I had a confrontation, I will take the confrontation. I never pull out of it. You know what I mean? Even though I'm small, basically, but I was never, the type to flinch or take something from somebody who thought he's going to get away with something on me. So, whether it was at work or wherever, even with the high bosses, I never, I never took second seat to them. If they were wrong, they were wrong. One incident at work was that I was in charge of the audit division. I became the head of the audit division, and all of a sudden I got a phone call on a Friday, and that they suspect that one of the girls in one of the projects was stealing money. So who could I call? So at that point, I had to get somebody out there. So I called up. I don't know if you heard the name Shirley Scheinbart. Shirley Scheinbart was one of my auditors, very bright Jewish woman, older than I was. She died in Florida. She walked out of a restaurant and she fell and banged her head onto the pavement and died.
Wow.
Anyhow, Shirley was a nice woman, and so I called her up. I said, Shirley, you think you can stop off at this project? There's a problem there. They think that slips are coming in and shortage of cash. So she went in and started to check and everything. So anyhow, she finished up on a Monday. She came back with a whole report of all the money that this girl was stealing, and the girl disappeared. Once we sent the auditor in. What happened was that so the controller comes out and he starts screaming at me. He says, "Why did you use Shirley Scheinbach for this job? Why did you use that for?" She says, "There's another problem, another case." She goes, and what if that case comes up in front of the court when this case is going to come up in front of the court? So I says to him, "What are you talking about?" His name was Jacob. "What are you talking about?" I says, "What are you screaming about?" I says, "First of all, I don't want you ever to tell me how to use my staff." I says, "I know my staff. I know what they can do, and I know who I can rely on." I gave him right back to him. I says, "And what the hell do you think the odds are that the two cases are going to come out at the same time? I mean, it's just preposterous, you're thinking." And he backed up and walked out. I put him right in his place, so, just... So I never, I confronted one time the head of the whole division on one situation. We were trying to get my friend Herbie Fine and Herbie Mallon and myself. We were on this list to be promoted. But we got wind of that this fellow, he was a lawyer. He was a shrewd guy, a Jewish guy, and he was pulling shtick. He wanted to put certain people in certain positions that would favor whatever the situation was. So we were all called into the head of the personnel department. And they kept the room dark. And he sat there with the light on, and we sat in front of him. And who was in the corner was this guy, the lawyer, the head of the division. But they were buddies. So I knew right away, there's a shtick going on already. So this guy started, the head of, also was a Jewish guy. He started it, he says, you have to take your turn, and we have to make people, whatever, and he's trying to cook up bullshit stories. So then this guy, Levine, his name was Levine, he started to jump in the situation, Mark Levine. So I says to Mark, I says, "Do you know what you're talking about?" I says, "You don't even know me. You don't know what I can do." I says, you never did anything with me, and yet you're making judgments on what we can do and what we can do. And you are going to discriminate against us because you have some friends that you like to put them in. I says, I'm an auditor, I'm in a field. These guys are auditors, they're out in the field. You don't know us. You don't know what we can do. I said, you don't see us because we're not in central office. When you're in central office, you have an edge because you're working with all these guys. But when you're out on the field, they only know you once a month when they see your reports come in and what your findings are. So he had and hawed, and then he backed off out of the situation. Next thing I know, they made the list and they made us on the list.
So you guys all got promoted to the home office?
Well, eventually, yes, right, because I came in, and now I came into the, I came into the audit division as an assistant, and Herbie Mallon got into the special audit division, and Herbie Fine got promoted into the insurance division. So, but it just shows you that sometimes you have to fight for situations. I never backed off on it. I may not be the best speaker, but when I had to say something, I let them know. And usually it made sense. So those are some of my little experiences with confrontation and my personality. Although I seem to be very easygoing and all of that. But as a matter of fact, there's one incident I remember. This was in Queens, and I was with my daughter Carol, and we were on Westchester, around the corner from where we lived, and something came up with some guy, and he's what do you call it? He was pushing me, he was making all kinds of things, and I got out of the car, and I went after this guy. And this guy come out, and this guy went right back into the car and never came out again. And I remember my daughter Carol saying, "Wow, I didn't know, Dad, you could do that." So that was interesting.
So back at this period of time, like, were you a big sports fan in the Bronx?
Oh yeah, a big ball player. We had big games. We had a very good team. I even have a picture of my baseball team. I was on the team. I was the leadoff hitter on my baseball team, and I was the youngest guy, but they always picked me. These were all my brother's pals. They were all in the service together, practically all of them. Marines, different things they were in. And but I was a good ball player, excellent ball player. And most of them, I would say, were even Gentile boys, Irish, Greek, Italian. And then we had this big smattering of Jews in there, good players. Our shortstop was a Jewish boy. We called him Pee Wee. And he was very good. The pitcher was also a Jewish boy, Rosenthal. My brother was the catcher. I usually played second base. And then we have different boys, center field, whatever. We had a nice team, had a good team.
But what about professional sports? You lived in the Bronx. Were you a Yankees fan?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you, I was intimidated. My brother was an ardent Brooklyn Dodger fan. He was such an ardent fan, he hit one guy in the mouth and knocked him out. It was unbelievable.
Why was he a Brooklyn fan?
He always liked the underdog. He hated the Yankees with a passion because they always won. And he liked the Dodgers because they were an underdog team. But the Dodgers always they had one guy, he was a Jewish guy, Jake Pittler. Jake Pittler was the coach, first base coach for the Dodgers. The biggest ones that hired Jews was the New York Giants.
The Giants played at the Polo Grounds?
Polo Grounds. Yeah, we used to go to Polo Grounds. But when the Dodgers played the Giants, oh wow, what a big game. Those days the Yankees and the Dodgers only met in the World Series. They didn't have interleague. So the Giants-Dodger game was unbelievable. Giants had always Jewish players. Their Danning was a catcher. Their third baseman was Rosen. They had Weintraub was on first base for them. They always had Jewish players on the Giants for some reason, and it was not owned by Jews. Wellington Mara was their owner.
Who now owns the Mets?
Not Wellington Mara.
He owns another team.
He does? Maybe it's his son, his grandson.
He owned you're saying he owned the
Giants, New York Giants.
So maybe he.
That family.
Maybe he owns. Family. Maybe when they moved, they continued to own them.
Oh yeah, that's possible. Yeah, they were, but the Yankees never had Jewish players. Till much later on, like in the last 15, 20 years, they had a Bloomberg, something like that. He played for the Yankees. Very rarely. They were always a Gaisha team.
So your brother was a big Brooklyn Dodger?
Brooklyn Dodger. My brother used to take me, he used to work all night, Saturday night. He worked, those days they used to keep we lived on the bottom of the market. And these guys would, after Shabbos, these guys would open up the fruit stands. And he worked for the guy in our building on the bottom. He worked with this guy, and then at the end he would pack up and put everything away. And he worked all night. I gave him $1.50 to my brother. Next morning, my mother would make up 2 big flasks of chocolate milk, and I don't know how many sandwiches and whatever, pack it up. And my brother would take me. He said, we're going to Abbotsfield, Brooklyn. So we used to take the ride from the Bronx to Manhattan, then change to the BMT. Then get to Brooklyn was a schlep. But he used to go there. But it was a very nice, Brooklyn, Abbotsfield was a nice little, they called the bandbox. It was a little, everything was covered. The Yankee Stadium and the Polo Grounds, if you were a poor guy, you sat in the, what do you call it? You sat in the bleachers, you died. I know these old guys used to sit there sweating, covered up. Was the sun beat on you? And those days you only went with a double header. So I got dead. But
okay, so no night games yet.
No night games. No night. So what happened? I'm talking about 1941, 42. So he used to take me. But what happened was, if you were in the bleachers in the Abbotsfield, you were covered, because there was just one big cover. And not only that, if you look at the stadium or the Polo Ground, they had benches for the poor slobs. There, everybody had the same seat. It was a single seat, one all the way around. They just put the furthest part, they put for the center was the bleachers. Same price. I don't know how much he paid for a seat. 25 cents. I don't think it was 50 cents, And we made a whole day of it over there. It was a big Dodger fan. And the neighborhood, the kids all argued. All they did was argue. We talked about 3 things as kids. We talked about baseball, whose center fielder is better than the other guy's center fielder. We argued. Everybody knew everybody's name because there were only 8 teams in each league. So you knew every ball player, you knew everybody's name. So there were arguments. So we talked about baseball. Politics we never talked about. What was the other thing? We talked about baseball. We talked about, and a bigger topic than baseball was girls. So we talked about girls or baseball. That was the 2 big issues. We could talk about hours and about girls. And that was I don't know, I guess things don't change. I don't know what the kids talk about today. But
probably the same plus video games.
The what?
Probably the same things plus video games.
Yeah, we didn't have things like that. You know, we never had anything.
So did you, what fan were you? You became a
I
Brooklyn
was,
Dodgers
originally
fan?
I was a Yankee fan. And then I became a Brooklyn Dodger fan, but a, what do you call these guys who don't come out of the,
You were in the closet.
I was in the closet Yankee fan, because
Oh,
I was afraid of my brother.
you were afraid of your brother.
So I protected the Dodgers to the,
But you were a closet Yankee
I was a
fan.
closet Yankee fan.
Did you used to go to Yankee games? Because they would have been very close to you.
Oh yeah, Yankees was the closest. We used to walk to Yankee Stadium. It was a long walk. We had to go all the way across the other side of the Bronx. Yankee Stadium was a very nice place to watch a game. But my brother he hated the Yankees. He don't go to the, yeah. But we used to go at night sometimes. They had night games, in late 40s, very late 40s, early 50s. So we can go there and watch, like if the Red Sox came in. Now there was a purpose to go there, because now he could root for the Red Sox. You know, I went when the Detroit kid would come in, very 45, 46, 47. I think he was already gone. Hank Greenberg used to come in with the Detroit Tigers. I saw Hank Greenberg play. He was into my high school, so I had a reason to go, you know, watch him play. So that was.
You went to a World Series once, you told me. You snuck into a World Series?
Oh no, yeah, no, not the World Series. No, I didn't go to. I went to see. Oh, when we got married, we lived on one station away. We lived one station away from Yankee Stadium. The New York Giants football team played in the Yankee Stadium those days. And every Sunday when they were home, Carol was just a baby. She was just born, 1963, the winter of 63 into 64. So she was a baby, and Mama would take her downstairs or whatever, but her grandmother lived in the same building. So they would go down and watch the baby. So I used to tell her, Mama, I says, I'm going to the game. I says, if I'm not back by 1:30, the latest, I got into the game. I never had a ticket. So what they did there was, I stood by a gate.
Which stadium?
Yankee Stadium. One gate was the last one to be left open for latecomers. They left one gate open, and all the other gates were closed. So I myself and a few other guys, you know, it was more than a few, number of people who just knew what the heck to do. So I got wisened up about this. So we stood on the side, right at the gate, and the guy would take tickets, and the next person went in, and he would change the thing, and then he would look at us, and I would say, so he would say, he would point, go. So walked in, and handed him $1. You know, he took the $1, he turned the halfway, snuck in, turned it back, it didn't register. They went into the game. I walked upstairs. If I went upstairs, I gave the guy 50 cents on the upper deck, and he would give me a seat, you know, who didn't show up in a box seat.
Oh, wow.
You know. So this was a little racket he had. And we did this, I did this I saw every Giant game that season. And my Mama's uncle, her real aunt's husband, he worked in for a
We have less than a minute, so.
Oh, he worked in a grocery store, and he had somebody who gave him tickets to one of the Giant games. So he gave me the ticket. So I went. I was so unhappy. He gave me a ticket on a what do you call a level, the field level, behind first base, in the back. And everybody stood up. I stood up. You couldn't say anything. You don't know if the guy made 2 yards, 5 yards, 10 yards. Well, you couldn't say it. They were all screaming and hollering. When I got in free for $1, I went upstairs and I went with the ball. Went with the ball, but I saw the whole field. I saw the whole game. I loved that. I got things like that to the championship game between the Giants and the Green Bay Packers. The Giants lost that game 3-0. It was 3 degrees outside. They were sitting in the chairs dying, and I was under the stands walking with the ball. And I saw the whole game for $1. And they were paying scalping outside $75 tickets. It was a lot of money. 1963, 64. $75 they paid for a ticket for a game. People making $15 a week, you know. So that was very interesting. So that game, I saw every game that game for the Yankees, just for a few dollars. And these guys used to do that with the Ranger games in Madison Square Garden, the old garden, not the new one, the old garden. You used to sit on the side, the guy used to let them in, you know, made $1 on the side, turned it halfway.
Right.
So everything is a racket. But that was fun. That was, did that. And then the war came, I don't know, the war came and then they were collecting metal for the war. And if you bought metal in 5-10 pounds of metal, you can go into the polo grounds free to the game. It's like a bunch of idiots. We all schlepped all these pipes and everything. We carried it. You don't know how far we had to go. My God. And then these guys came along, picked up a can from the ground and threw it on the pile and walked in. And we slept into this stupid thing. I couldn't believe it. Because we were honest, you know. But they were collecting metal for the war effort. It was 1942. Within the next season, my brother was drafted. I took him right out of high school. Boom. He was finished 6th grade high school, what was that, halfway. And then in September, he was in the service.
Let's stop there.